Mike Smith has joined us because Mike is helping to coordinate the Aotearoa's Not For Sale Hikoi, which is coming up in a few weeks' time. Thanks for joining us, Mike. A warm welcome to Wate. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Dale.
Good to talk with you, Mike. You're organising this in what capacity? As a Māori man or something to do with Greenpeace or some lobby groups?
Oh, no, this is an initiative that's been sanctioned by all the iwi in the far north have agreed that this action needs to take place. And I guess it's because the government's currently engaged in an aggressive campaign to claw back the gains that we've made over the last 20 years, Dale. You know, the National Party's trying to make out like Māori people are the bad guys, that we're greedy, we're trying to take over the resources and public assets, and that they're going to protect the country from Māori greed, but in reality, they're not protecting anything. What they're doing is selling off our country's resources to their mates in big business, and often these companies are foreign-owned, and therefore, instead of the profits going back to New Zealanders, the profits are going overseas. And it's Māori rights under Te Tiriti or Waitangi that are getting in the way, so they want these rights extinguished, Dale.
That's the way I'm reading it too, Mike. Who are leading the Hikoi?
Well, the Hikoi is going to be led by kaumātua and mokopuna in the respective areas. We don't want to be pokanoa and walk into people's tribal areas, without their previous consent. So I've been in contact with all the major tribal areas that we're going to be passing through. The Hikoi is going to have three parts to it. Whānau Apanui and Ngāti Kaunui, Ngāti Pro are going to bring their people down the east coast. Maniapoto, Taranaki, Whanganui are going to bring their people down the west coast. We're all meeting up in Holowhenua and arriving in Parliament on the 4th. So as we move through each area, the kaumātua and the mokopuna and the rangatira of that area will bring us across their territory. So it's not a hikoi that's led by any individual. It's not a hikoi that's led by any political party, although the Mana Party and the Māori Party see the need for this, and they've agreed to kick in behind it and support it as well, Dale.
Look, we get the impression that that the sale of the energy companies, for instance, is a fait accompli. You don't think so, or do you think we'll be able to stop this sell-off of national assets?
Yeah, well, it's not just the energy companies. They're selling the energy companies. They're selling land, the Crayford farms to overseas investors. We've got the EEZ reform, which is the alienation of the moana, which is it's a complicated thing, but it's like the foreshore and seabed. That went from the high water mark to the 12-mile limit. Now what they're wanting to do is the same thing from the 12-mile limit out to the 200-mile limit. They're privatising water, allocating water consents. John Key said no one owns the water, but then they're selling off consents to private bottlers. There's an aggressive resource extraction campaign going on with coal, oil and gas. So it's a whole wide range of issues that we're campaigning on. But yes, we do believe that we can stop it. The Māori political parties are powerless to stop this because they don't have the numbers in Parliament. And that's why the public has to stand up and prevent this from happening. And it is possible because when 50,000 people in Auckland said no to mining on conservation land in 2010, the government was forced to back down. So we believe that it is entirely possible to prevent this. So what I'm doing, Dale, is I'm asking for the people of Auckland to give up a couple of hours on Saturday, the 28th of April, to join our Hikoi at Victoria Park, which is on the city side of the Harbour Bridge, at 2 o'clock for a march up Queen Street to demonstrate that we're not going to take this line down. So what I'm saying to all our listeners is that we need your support on Saturday, April the 28th. So.
And I'm hoping that we'll see good numbers come down in there, huge numbers actually, Mike, because, once sold, never regained.
Well, that's the thing, the government is compromising the economic sovereignty of our whole country, and it's an issue not just for Māori people. If anything, we've been the ones that have stood in the way of privatisation. They were going to privatise fisheries, but because of our claims, we stood in the way of that. They were going to privatise broadcasting, but because of our claims, we stood in the way of that. And that's why we've got our fabulous irirangi Māori around the country. We've got Māori television, Kohanga Reo. All of those initiatives have been hard-fought things. We've had to struggle for those things. So it is possible for us to achieve a lot of positive outcomes for our people. But the thing is, we've got a very hostile government at the moment. I mean, John Key is the smiling face of the national government, but they only put him into place because Don Brash was the ugly face of the national government. They decided that they needed a new look. But really, their policies haven't changed, just the faces at the front. They went from bad cop to good cop, but essentially nothing's changed. So all that ugly stuff that Don Brash was talking about a couple of years ago is exactly the same policies that are being rolled out. So what we're doing, Dale, is we're saying to all New Zealanders, this isn't just a Māori initiative. If you're concerned about what's happening with the direction of our country, we are welcoming the participation of all people on this hikoi. It's a hikoi for our country as opposed to a hikoi just for Māori. It's about stopping the continual erosion of all our rights as citizens to control our economic destiny in the future and to not surrender that to overseas companies.
Tēnā koe, and I tautoko I o kōrero, Mike. Obviously, the consultation process has been a sham, and many believe it lacks integrity. But the government are claiming that they have a political mandate from the people to proceed with privatisation. Your thoughts?
No, well, see, there were opinion polls that were conducted prior to the election on asset sales because the government was campaigning on it. And overwhelmingly, about 80% of the people that responded to those polls said that they weren't in favour of asset sales. Even a lot of National Party supporters, true blue national supporters were very, very uneasy about that aspect of this government's policies. But I guess, one of the problems with the last election is that huge numbers of people didn't bother to vote. And so there's a huge groundswell of people out there who just don't have confidence in the government. Many Māori people don't have confidence in the government. They just don't see the difference between Labour and National. They just can't be bothered voting. And many of our people are looking at alternatives. They're exploring the notions of Māori self-determination. There's groups set up that are looking at, the whakamininga and the Declaration of Independence. There's people that are exploring Tino Rangatira and what that means. You've got groups that are looking at constitutional change. I'm part of a group with Moana Jackson and a lot of other Māori leaders that are currently looking at how do we enshrine and protect our rights. But we just can't trust the governments. Doesn't matter who they are. Labour sold us out, National selling us out. We just, we need protections and a supreme law, which a constitution would be, to ensure that politicians can't tutu around with those rights. And so I think that's one of the reasons why that we can make this claim that the government doesn't have the mandate to actually sell these assets overseas.
Now, the foreshore seabed Hikoi failed to change the government's mind. Why will this one?
Well, one of the things we're doing is, when the foreshore and seabed march turned up in Wellington, there was 50,000 odd people standing in the grounds of Parliament. But the politicians knew that all they had to do was hold their breath for 12 hours, and when they woke up in the morning, we'd all be gone, and we were. Except at this time round, we're not going to do that. We're going to stay in Wellington for a period of 5 days. We've got a whole lot of actions planned, demonstrations to bring these things to the forefront of our nation's consciousness. And we've had great support, Sir Ngā Tata Love from the Wellington Tents Trust, because just about all of our leaders realise what's going on. They know it's bad. They know it's got to be stopped. So Ngā Tata Love said, Mike, if you bring 30,000, 40,000 people down to Wellington for a week, we will look after you. The Wellington Tents Trust said we will put our resources, our financial resources behind this. We will accommodate and feed your people for as long as they're in Wellington, and they've offered us really, really awesome and massive support. I mean, the foreshore and seabed Hikoi, what did it produce? Well, it produced the Māori Party. For good or bad, that was a fairly significant outcome of that mobilisation of people. Unfortunately, there's been a disintegration of that, but those issues will resolve themselves over time, and I'm fully expecting that those factions will come back together again because we need to consolidate Māori power if we're to have any hope at all of defending our position.
Mike, can we just touch on again this perception of Māori greed? Because you and I and anyone with half a brain and a little interest in the Māori political scene would know that Māori have been incredibly generous with settlements akin to something like 2% of values that Māori actually deserve for historical redress, 2 cents in the dollar deals, and that's become the norm in the settlement arena. Yet, making up 15% of the population, here we are again mobilising to try and protect the interests of wider New Zealand. That's hardly greed.
Well, no, of course it's not. But that whole notion of Māori greed is, was something that was constructed by the spin doctors in the National Party during Don Brash's time, and actually even before that. It was an orchestrated campaign of disinformation to scare conservative New Zealanders and to drive them in their hordes over to the National Party. It's a mean trick. They set up the fear, and then they position themselves as the knights on the white horses that are going to ride in and save the day, when actually there's no day to be saved in a sense. If there's a day to be saved, we've got to save ourselves from actually what the National Party's doing. We're not the greedy ones that are selling this country overseas. We're trying to protect it for the citizens of this country. And the Treaty of Waitangi said that we've got a deal between ourselves as Māori people and the other non-Māori citizens of this country. We're kind of locked in a relationship with them. And so that's how it's going to be from now on and into the future. But we're not locked into any relationship with overseas companies. Once we lose the sovereignty, the economic sovereignty of our country, there's no deal between us and, a big oil company like Petrobras or Chevron or Shell who want to come in here and suck all the oil out of our lands. Give us 5%. We get 5% royalty. They get 95% of the profits, and we get 100% of the risk. We're seeing what happened with the Arena. That's what we're talking about. It's just a cruel trick, Dale. And I watched last night, I went back and I watched a very excellent film called The Hollow Men. It was based on a book by Nikki Hager. And I'm going to put it up on my Facebook site today. And I encourage people, if you want to understand how all of that spin doctoring and all that false consciousness is created by the political parties, that's a really, really good expose on how they do it, how they convince Pākehā people that we're the greedy ones. And then they, while everybody's looking at us, they slide everything out from underneath the feet of the citizens of this nation, and then they turn around and sort of say, well, it's the Māori people that are at fault. It's just it's despicable what they're doing,
And I'm pleased that you draw attention to it. There are many listening today who perhaps are not as aware as they should be of how manipulative and contrived a lot of the political moves are in this country. And a lot of it advised by an outfit based in Australia and who helps to work internationally to overthrow various political regimes. So, let's not be ignorant of just how manipulative a lot of the behind-the-scenes moves are in politics. And Mike's quite right. Once these assets, especially our power-generating assets, flicked off, all profits then go offshore. To the multinational companies. It's good to catch up with you on this stuff too, Mike. I'm looking forward to talking with you again. The Hikoi starts on the 24th of April. How can we help?
Well, I guess the main thing is for people in Auckland, I know it's a big ask asking people to, give up their time, to give up their scant resources. Petrol's so expensive. So we're not asking people to come all the way with us. If you can, that's fantastic. You'll be looked after. But at the very least, what I'm asking listeners to do is to come to Victoria Park, 2 o'clock on the 28th, and just to join us for that march up Queen Street. If we've got really big numbers there, the rest of the country will see it, and that'll ignite people to come down to Wellington, where the main event is going to be when we arrive in Wellington and the subsequent 5 days that we're going to be spending there. If it just looks like there's half a dozen people aren't going to be that enthusiastic. So what you can do to help and, is to come to Victoria Park, 2 o'clock on the 28th, meet us there. There's another demonstration that's being planned. We're going to march our Hikoi into that and join that demonstration, go up Queen Street, and we're looking for a really fantastic result that day, Dale.
Excellent. Any sites that people should be aware of?
Any sites?
Website stuff?
Oh, yes. Well, we've got an events page up on Facebook, No Asset Sales in Aotearoa. So for those people on Facebook, they can go in and check it out, or they can jump on my page, Mike Smith. There's probably thousands of Mike Smiths on Facebook, but you can search me out and jump on our page. We're pumping out information daily on what's happening. Listen to your local iwi radio station. The information is going to be coming out over the iwi stations over the next week or two.
Tēnā koe, Mike. Good to catch up with you, Mike. Thanks for the heads up on the Hikoi, and congratulations for the effort put in thus far. Very important, and it's right that we stand up against these asset sales rather than just meekly allow them to proceed. Thanks very much, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Dale.
Tēnā koe, mate. All the best.